Alrighty, guys. Welcome back to Rich Artist Fridays. My name is Sophie. If you've never been here, thank you for being in here live or for watching the recording. I'm very happy it's Friday again. I always think these sessions just like give you that last little bit of energy and inspiration and motivation to sort of round out your week. I know they definitely do for me. So I'm very happy that you're here spending the time with me. Thank you. I started the Rich Artist program because I wanted to counterbalance the stigma of a starving artist. And my career really only started giving me a lot of stability and also peace of mind once I learned how to handle the business side of things. And for a long time, I couldn't really identify myself with that. I felt so much of an artist that I felt like if I dedicated time and energy into learning how to run a business, that it would take away from my creativity. And it's actually been quite the opposite. And I've had so many people helping me in this progress. I've had years and years of trial and error, and I'm hoping to prevent you guys from having to make some of the mistakes that I made. I've had my own coaches, I've had my own mentors and people that have taught me all of this stuff and all the people that I got to shadow in the industry. And I'm very much aware of the fact that a lot of you guys might not have the time or the resources or the access to gain those kind of experiences. So that's what the program is for, so that I can share those experiences with you guys and you guys have like a space where you can go when there is questions that pop up or when you do need somebody that's like, hey, I've gone through this as well. And the hopes is also to build a community where you guys can have an exchange with each other and realize that a lot of these things that we're sort of not struggling, but like trying to obtain for ourselves and the knowledge they're trying to gain and the things that we're trying to get insight into, we're all sort of in the same boat as freelance artists. So that's what the program is for. And the Rich Artist Fridays are just 30-minute quickies where I get to talk about, specific topics that pop up a lot that I know a lot of you have sort of similar questions around, or just things that are on my mind. And we do a good balance between tactical input and like the technical side of running a business and of being a photographer, but then also the mental side of it, like the identity work, the sort of how can I show up confident on a client call, or how can I negotiate my prices without it turning into this like emotional mess for me. So we do a lot of those kind of things. And before we get started into today's topic, which is a very tactical one today, we're going to talk about contracts. I wanted to remind you guys that I am doing another 8-week installment of our Rich Artist program, which is starting next week. November 1st is going to be the first week. It's going to be 8 weeks. So we finish right the week leading up to Christmas. We did our first installment of that program over the summer, and it was so much fun. By the time we finished the 8 weeks, we felt like we were graduating college because we'd spent so much time together. It's 1 hour live every single week, and you guys can still sign up for it. It's $600 for the full 2 months of live sessions, and you get all of the recordings to it and so much input. So I would love for you guys to be there. And it's sort of just the foundation of things that have helped me make my business what it is today. Years and years of experiences went into the curriculum there. And I just wanted to have this program for you guys where it's all condensed into one, where if you don't know where to start, from me to you, this is where to start. So I would love for you guys to come there. And that was a long intro. And now let's get cracking into today's topic, which is contracts, because I get asked about contracts all the time, whether it's TFP contracts or actual client contracts. I'm going to show you a template of my model release form because that's something I get asked about all the time. I think it's a good place to start. Little disclaimer, obviously, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not allowed to give you guys legal advice here. This is just for you guys to sort of get a little glimpse at the world of contracts and also maybe to take the intimidation out of it. I know when I first started working with large brands and I was getting hit with very lengthy contracts, it freaked me out because I didn't have a team of lawyers. I didn't have an agent that was like, oh, this is a standard contract, like just sign it or whatever. No, I was sitting there for hours and hours reading contracts, trying to be like, what does this mean? So I thought we'd at least sort of take a glimpse at it today so you guys have like a rough idea of what is typically in a photographer's contract. And obviously there's lots and lots of different versions of it. Today I'm just going to show you two. I'm going to show you a sort of collaborative TFP contract, which I know a lot of you guys have probably already seen, but I'll just show you what's in mine. Maybe you guys can pick up a couple of lines that you might want to add to yours. And then I'm going to give you a rough rundown of some of the things that I've come across in commercial contracts, for example, if you're working with a brand. So TFP contracts, I'll keep this one brief, but I think this is a good place to start. I think it's super important when you're doing collaborations with people to have contracts in certain situations. And guys, there's so many templates online. Like if you just Google TFP model releases, oh, I think I'm lagging a little bit. How's my camera? All right. Sorry, you guys. We had a little bit of an intermission, technical problems, and um, today is just pure chaos, okay? Come on. Goodbye. All right, guys. Where did I stop? We were talking about TFPs. So TFP stands for time for pictures, time for payment. Probably should have Googled that before I taught you guys about it. But technically, TFPs are just model releases where you come to an agreement without payment or without monetary compensation, I should say. So it's a contract where it says, this model is modeling for you, and in exchange, you're giving them the photos. So time, the model's time for your pictures. And these contracts are pretty crucial in certain projects that you'll probably do. For a while, I started giving all of the models in front of my camera TFP contracts because I did have experiences where it would just be like a friend, an acquaintance. I figured it wasn't necessary. It was a very casual setup. And then afterwards, I put a lot of effort into the images, only in order for the model to be like, I don't like the way my nose looks and I don't want you to release these images. And you've put all of your time into it. And, you know, even if you're not paying your talent, these images are for you to propel your business forward, to build your portfolio. So you need some sort of job security in the time that you're putting into it. And also for the model, you know, the model needs to know that after they've modeled for you that they are going to receive the images within a timely manner, and how many images are they signing up for, and all of that stuff. So I'm going to show you guys just a rough example of a contract I would use for this. And also, where's my contract? There it is. All right, so can you guys see this? Perfect. How do we get out of editing mode? Okay, here we go. There is like a date in here. Just ignore that. I was like right before we started, I was trying to delete that out. So this, for example, I still use these contracts all the time when I'm doing sort of like pro bono work, or if I'm working on stuff for my portfolio, especially if I'm working with models that aren't signed to agencies. For example, I don't know if you guys have seen this series that I did that was, okay, I'm so sorry, guys. I did a series with LGBTQ elders. So these aren't professional models. These are just people that are signing up to be in front of my camera. These people I don't see very often. It's hard to get in touch with them. And they're not in the photography world. So it was important for me to get a release form signed by them the day of the shoot, that like during the time that they were on my set, so that I knew that I could utilize these images for my portfolio. Now, this contract also states that I won't be using them for commercial purposes. So as soon as I make money off of these images, we have to set up a new contract, because then the model oftentimes has a right to a certain percentage of that compensation. So if I sell one of these images to MAC Cosmetics and I make $2,000, the model gets a cut of that. And at that point, this contract isn't part of that deal. So this contract is more so that I can, for example, use these images to participate in a competition for an exhibition or something like that. Or that I can put them on my website. I can put them on my business cards. I can put them on Instagram. This one here is an interesting one. I think it has a nudity clause in it. I just grabbed one from like one of my last, yeah, here. The model specifically acknowledges being fully aware of the nature of the photographs and warrants her consent to appear fully and or partially nude in some or all the photographs. This is something that is really important, guys. Even if like partial nudity ends up happening and it wasn't intended, set up a new contract. That's what I did here. Like this project was obviously like this is a contract I used for the LGBTQ elders. There was not supposed to be nudity in there, but there was a trans woman and she was ripping her top off. There was no stopping her. And I was like, it's kind of an epic photo. And I was doing an exhibition in Milan at that time, and I wanted to be able to submit that image. So I had her sign a separate contract because nudity is very touchy. You don't want to piss anybody off. You don't want people to be disappointed. You don't want to intrude upon their comfort, you know, and getting everything black on white. I cannot state this enough. Just even when you think you don't need it, do it anyways. Like that's what makes you a professional, even if there's no money exchange here. Like treat it as any other job, okay? So get that signed. It'll just say things like photos taken on this day, the purpose of the photographs, that you have the right to publish, that you preserve the copyright, like these are your images, they do not belong to the model, that you're gonna, this one in here says that I'm gonna edit the images, but I'm not gonna change like the foundational integrity of the image. So like I'm not gonna change your body into something that it isn't, but that post-production will be happening on these images, and that the model releases and agrees to not like sue me over these images or something because we have this contract. So like if once you publish an image, obviously things can happen to the image or other people can take the image and run with it, and then that is out of your hands. So that like if somebody takes your image and does something fucked up with it, that you're not going to be held accountable for that, but that you take full responsibility for the way that you are releasing the images. If you are shooting minors, there needs to be a clause in here where one of their guardians signs with the talent. That's super important as well. Like if you're doing a project with kids or something like that, always get one of these contracts, guys. I cannot state that enough. I have a clause in here about coercion as well and representation, because it's important that my models know that I pay attention to this kind of stuff, that I'm not going to coerce them into being showcased in a light that they're uncomfortable with. So this is for both sides' security. This is not just for me. This is an agreement between two parties. So that's a quick glimpse at that. And yeah, if you guys just Google TFP, look out for some of these clauses in some of the templates that you'll find online, and then honestly guys, just modify it to what you want it to be. It's your contract. So, and if there's parts in there that you don't really understand or you don't see the point of them, honestly just delete them out. Like make it what you need it to be for the sake of your project. Now I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, but I'm gonna pull up one of my other contracts, and I'm sorry I can't actually like screen share the commercial contracts that I have with you guys, just because every time I sign a contract, I sign an NDA as well. And, but I have a contract pulled up here that is like a very good, like foundational example of what contracts can look like. So I thought I'd just verbally walk you guys through it. Now, when it comes to commercial contracts, obviously they're all very individual based on the client and the scope of the project. I've had contracts that were like 15 pages, and I've had commercial photo contracts that are like 2 pages. And it really depends on the client. And another reason why I wanted to talk about this today is because I find that so many freelance photographers are so petrified of entering into the world of commercial campaigns because I hear from them like, but I don't have a team of lawyers, or I've never done contracts before, or what if I don't understand what I'm signing? Like, we get so petrified that we're like signing our life away because we don't really know what we're doing. And I have been there, trust me. Like the first time I landed a big commercial campaign, like it was a beauty campaign that was like thousands and thousands of dollars, I got hit with a contract with wording that I was like, I don't even know what this means. This isn't even English. Like what, you know? And what I did back then is I threw one of the studio managers from my old boss, who was a really successful photographer, like a couple $100 to walk me through the contract, because she goes over contracts day in, day out. She like knows the standard verbiage for these contracts. And I was just scared that I was going to sign myself up for something that I was going to regret later, just because I didn't know what I was doing, and I needed somebody to look at it and be like, this is all pretty normal. But I want to say that when it comes to commercial contracts, most of the time, hopefully, knock on wood, people are not going to try to screw you over, okay? All of the contracts that I've come across were super standard. I have never found a clause in a contract that was like hidden somewhere, that was like gonna mess with me later, or something in a contract where like I didn't know what I was signing up for. So I want you guys to take the fear out of that. Even if there is verbiage in some of the contracts you might start coming across that you don't understand, I think in general, take the fear aspect out of it, but also ask questions. I think a lot of freelancers, when they start working with bigger clients, they get so intimidated to come across as a newbie, or, like you're sort of out of your realm of knowledge here, that they just pretend like it's all normal and chill, instead of being like, this is new to me, like, or like, I haven't come across this sort of verbiage, like, could you explain to me what this states? Like, I think it's way more professional to get into the nitty-gritty details, ask questions, be deliberate, because you want to understand the contract and the client wants you to understand their contract, okay? You're doing a business deal here, and it's in both parties' interest that everybody's happy with the deal. And your contract is the deal. The contract is the deal that you are signing up for. Now, there's a lot of like verbal exchange, but when it comes down to it, like what is black on white on paper is what you're both agreeing to. So you need to understand what you're agreeing to. And if you don't understand, the most professional thing is to just be honest about it and ask questions. Nobody's going to judge you for it. Nobody expects you to be a lawyer. And if you don't have an agent, there's nothing shameful about that, okay? I think it's actually very empowering when photographers learn how to do this themselves first before they outsource it, hand it off to somebody else. Like, do I love reading contracts? Hell no. Do I like having people that do this for me, that can sort of inform me of, oh, this part should be added or this is missing? Like, yeah, absolutely. But I feel so much more confident delegating that out to other people now that I've done it a couple times myself. And the first couple times I got these contracts, I was sitting there for 2 hours with a marker, like breaking my brain over this stuff, okay? But I needed to do that. I needed to like be forced to get into that, even though it was the last thing I wanted to do. And I'm so glad I did. So I highly encourage you guys to not be afraid of it. And if you ever do come across a contract, like I said, I can't give you legal advice, but if you ever want to send me something and be like, does this look normal to you? Or if you have any like questions about like, what does this mean? Like, if I can't help you, I'm very happy to do so. So I'll walk you through some of the standard things you might find in a commercial contract. So I have a contract pulled up here that was with a hair care brand. It was a commercial shoot nationwide for a new product release. So it'll say contract for photography services. And this is a contract that you could be giving the client or that the client could be giving you. You'll definitely be getting a contract from a client. Sometimes you'll like exchange contracts, or sometimes you'll just add in your clauses because you're both signing it anyways. It'll say this photography contract is made effective on this date, and by and between your name, your address, and company address, da da da. Sometimes it'll say like, from here on referred to as the photographer and the client, so that your name doesn't have to be in it the whole time. And then you'll come across something like description of services. So it'll say something like, Sophie Keatson will provide X company the following photography services. And then it'll sort of line it up, like here, for example, it says campaign images. Sometimes it'll say 3 campaign images, 2 video reels, and 1 stop motion reel, or whatever the scope of the project is, just so like you have it all laid out right away. Performance of services, which is like a description of what you're actually doing for them, is to take photographs per this client's request, allowing artistic expression, it says here. So like you're being brought on not only as a service provider, but also as the artist. That the photographer agrees to use high technical quality to meet X client's needs for web or print or whatever these images are going to be used for. Here, for example, it says that I will use digital photography, color management consultancy knowledge to create the photographs that X client is hiring me for. And then, for example, in here it says, within such and such many days, the photographer will provide this client with a lookbook or samples of the final proof within five days or whatever. Now, this can vary depending on like how you're handing over images or whatever, but you'll have some of that sort of verbiage in there. Payment is a section that should obviously be in there. It'll say the client agrees to pay the photographer X amount of money for these photography services rendered. In consideration for this fee, the photographer will devote X amount of days to cover the event or the occasion or the production. Blah, blah, blah. I will provide proofs or a lookbook for the client to review for final purchase of the images. And it says in here, photographer will provide client with a cost sheet itemizing the cost of different packages and individual photo purchases. Now, we've done a whole separate section about writing estimates for clients. Oftentimes, after you've written an estimate that the client agrees upon, that will be added into this contract. So your estimate will be part of this contract so that the client is basically signing off on what you gauge the project will cost. That technically means that the client is agreeing to pay what you estimated, but no more. And if it ends up being less, then that's what you will get paid. Because sometimes there are like costs that you don't know before the production has happened. Or sometimes you'll have contracts where it'll just say, this is what you're getting paid. Deposit. I always charge a 50% deposit on commercial shoots at least, depending on like timing wise. Sometimes if it's like a really quick turnaround, I'll even charge 75% of the project up front because I know that I'll have a lot of quick turnaround costs. Like the studio rental, I need to pay my assistants, even before I've finished retouching the images and stuff. They live paycheck to paycheck, so I want to be able to pay my crew right after they've done the production with me. I might have to have equipment delivered. I need to put a deposit down with the rental studio, all of these things. So charging a deposit, always important. And then there's a clause in here, a cancellation policy, which goes hand in hand with that the deposit is non-refundable. For example, within the week of the production, or if within the week of the production the shoot is canceled, you pay back 50% of the deposit. So 25% of the whole production you keep, because at that point you've blocked out your schedule. You've maybe had to decline other clients because you're on hold for this client, and if within really short notice you get canceled on, you have costs that might already have running costs. So there will be different cancellation policies in there. You can take a look at what the client is suggesting. I also suggest that you sort of think about, okay, what is the scope of this production? Have you maybe already invested time into the pre-production of this? Have you been on 5 creative phone calls with this client? At that point, you should be getting compensated. And you can put a clause in here saying that the pre-production fee that is listed under the estimate will be non-refundable, regardless of whether the project happens or not. How does that sound? Thumbs up, are you still with me? Okay, great. There is a clause in here that says term, which is just like at what point this contract commences. And then there's a clause in here that you can extend or renew the agreement by all parties. So, for example, if you have a commercial term, then you will be selling your usage rights to this client for a certain period of time. So let's say, okay, you produced 5 campaign images and they're purchasing usage rights from you for a year. So for a year, they can use these images nationwide, digital, print, all of that. Once that year is up, guys, if the client is still using these images, you get another paycheck. You charge them again. You charge them the usage rights that you originally charged them, plus 25%, I would say, is pretty standard. So that's kind of amazing because if you start doing brand deals, then oftentimes you end up cashing in without doing any more work, which is amazing, which we love. um, Work product ownership, super important. Copyright terms. That is something that I always look out for if I'm being handed a contract by the client. You need to have a clause in there that you are the sole copyright owner of your images, and that the work product, aka your images, are the exclusive property, are your exclusive property. Upon request, photographer will execute all documents necessary to confirm or perfect the exclusive ownership of said photographer's ownership to the work product. So something along those lines is super important, and that's where I would be the most careful around as well when you're reading contracts from your clients. If there's verbiage in them that you don't understand or that's confusing you a little bit, always ask. Always ask to change the verbiage into something that you're comfortable with, because your photographs are your number one product and you don't ever want to give that away. I have come across contracts that were asking for a ownership buyout in perpetuity or something like that, which means like they own the rights indefinitely. Be super, super careful about those kind of contracts. Now, have I done a contract or two like that? I have, for sort of these like stock library platforms. Honestly, guys, it was because I wanted the money, because I wanted to get back into the studio space. I wanted the imagery for my portfolio to use to actually attract other commercial clients. But I am aware that in that sense, you're turning into a service provider. You're no longer the owner of the images, which is very tricky, because keep in mind, like, you could make a deal like that and 5 years later you'll see your image on a billboard and you'll have made like $1,000 off of it. Or 10 years later, your images are still circulating, and at that point your product, your photos might be worth so much more than you got paid for, which is why we sell usage rights for a limited period of time, because our services get more expensive and our product gets more expensive. Relationship of parties. It'll say something like that you are an independent contractor if you're a freelancer, and that you're not getting employed by your client. Confidentiality is something you'll come across. I have a clause in here, which is why I'm not telling you who this client was. It'll say things like the confidentiality around the unreleased product, around the communication and the manner and the information that was exchanged between you and the client. Like, all of that stuff is being kept internal. So this can also have a section in here that, you can share this with your employees, your agents, your representatives, and that they are agreeing to protect this information and treat it with strict confidentiality. But like, publicly, this is just between you and the client. Courtesy is, it just says that, like, it's in both parties' interest to have a positive corporation, and that punctuality is therefore essential. So sort of like, the courtesy of how you're doing this exchange, of how you're doing this job. You'll come across certain things that might or might not be in there, like warranty. Indemnification is that the client agrees to hold you harmless in terms of claims, losses, expensive fees, including attorney fees, costs, judgment that might be asserted against you as the photographer at the result of an act or omission of the client, its members, if any, and its agents. So like, let's say you make this campaign and the company gets sued for the campaign because it's outrageous or whatever, that you're being held harmless, so that they're not going to point a finger at you and be like, but they took the photo, it's their campaign, and they're the ones that are publishing it. So something along those lines. Warranty, let's see here real quick, is more like that, you will execute all of the agreements under the contract in a timely and workmanlike manner, that you will perform the services to meet generally acceptable industry standards, and will provide a standard of care equal to or superior to care used by service providers similar to you as the artist and similar projects. So you're not going to show up in your pajamas drunk the day of with a crappy camera. Default. So things that could happen that would sort of default this contract. So that could say things like the failure to make a required payment when due, the insolvency or bankruptcy of either party, the subjection of any of either party's property to any levy, seizure, general assignment for the benefit of creditors, application or sale for or by any creditor or a government agency. The failure to make available or deliver the service in the time and manner provided for in this contract. So if you don't show up, contract's done. You will find things like governing law, which will say like under which law this contract was made. So for me, for example, here it says under the governed by the law of the state of New York. Waiver of contractual rights, severability, which is if a court finds that any provision of this contract is invalid or unenforceable. So like if you're making a contract that goes against the general law, for example, then the contract wouldn't be legal. And that's pretty much it. There might be some things in there that are very like lawyer speak, like things like the governing law. Those things are very standard, but that section is, you'll come across the same kind of verbiage all the time. And that's where we get like into the really boring parts of contracts, which is like just the legal termage that needs to be in there. And with those things in the beginning, I definitely did ask quite a few questions, because that's where I was like, what does this mean? And these things you can ask the client, but in that, like if you come like the bottom section of your contracts, like the governing law or the waiver of contractual rights, that is questions that I would either ask a lawyer or a friend that has dealt with these contracts all the time, because it's just like general knowledge stuff of what this verbiage means, rather than like, okay, what is the client asking of you? So the upper sections are more where you would be like, okay, can we talk about the usage rights here, this agreement? Can we change this verbiage about the copyright ownership? Things like that. And then you will both sign, and then you will have your deal. Woohoo! I hope this didn't put you into REM sleep, but I'm glad that I got to give you guys a little bit of insight into what to expect potentially. And like I said, you know, it is always professional to just be honest and be yourself and ask questions for clarification, because that's way more important, that the client knows that you understand what you're signing, rather than being like, oh yeah, cool, like, I'll just sign it, and then afterwards you're like freaking out internally. So I'm so glad that I get to spend time with you guys. If you are starting to make these deals and you don't know who to call, you don't have a mentor to walk you through these things, hit me up for one-on-one coaching. I can guide you through it. When I work with my one-on-one coachees, we sit down, we take a close look at where exactly are you standing in your career, and what are your next like immediate goals that you're trying to reach, and what is the fastest way that we can get you there. And I wish that so many parts of this progression of my career, I didn't have to do it alone, or I didn't have to constantly hire people to temporarily come into my team in order that for me to even have somebody to ask questions to. That's why I do the one-on-one coaching. So if that's the point in your career where you're at, where you know that that sort of investment is going to propel you in the direction that you want to go, and hit me up. My consultations are for free. And if you're more interested in group coaching and general input about how to build your business, check out the program on November 1st. If you go into my website, sophiekietsma.com/learn, I have the whole curriculum laid out. I filmed little trailer videos for it, and you can read up on all of the modules that I chose, things like outreach programs, social media, visibility, how to talk to commercial clients, how to write estimates, how to set your prices, the execution of a commercial photo job, how to prevent creative burnout is in there because I think it's so important. So all of the main pillars that I find are crucial if you want to build a thriving, successful, rich artist business, in terms of like rich as in abundant in opportunities and resources and money and whatever you want it to look like. So that's what that is for. I'm so happy I got to spend another Friday with you guys. And I will see you next week. Check out my Eventbrite for the upcoming events. And I love you guys so much. Mwah!